Hello and welcome to Your World on SABC News Channel 404. I'm your host Lulu Gabu. On the show today, we bring you a special interview by SABC contributing editor Vuyo Mvoko speaking to the state president Jacob Zuma.
Good afternoon and welcome to this special broadcast brought to you by SABC News. Now, today we are in conversation with President Jacob Zuma following the State of the Nation address that he delivered on Thursday evening. Mr. President, welcome and thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to start by asking you what it is, if there was a single most important message that you wanted to pass to the nation on Thursday, what was that message?
Well, very simple message is that South Africa is better today than what it was before 1994. And I think it is important for all South Africans to realize that a lot of work has gone into our freedom and we have made progress. We have made a lot of things to change the quality of life. But at the same time, that because of the enormity of the damage that was done to the country, the challenge still remains that we need to do more.
Do you think you managed to convince the nation? In other words, you managed to rally the nation behind you to say, yes, there's a lot that still needs to be done, but a lot more needs to be done. In other words, do you think you managed to get everyone behind you? In other words, did you succeed in that single most important mission?
I think we did succeed to do so because really facts speaks for themselves. It was not like we are imagining what we are talking about. We are talking about what people know. 20 years, much as it might look a long time, is a short time. That those who were there when it started, they are still there. I think they are able to see that, yes, progress has been made.
Well, there are those who argue that no one is going to disagree with or disagrees with you when you say South Africa is a better place today than it was back in 1994. However, what they were looking for on Thursday was a message bigger than what you perhaps gave them. In other words, a message where you're going to be unambiguous and very clear about where this nation is going beyond this point. In other words, you told them what they knew, but you didn't inspire them enough to actually and channel their energies in a recognizable direction.
Well, that's always a problem, that people have their own angles to anything, what they want to do, what they think they want to hear, etc. I think the message was very clear. I made it very clear that we are giving a report, firstly, of the 20 years, not in greater details, but also a report about the past 5 years, given the fact that in 2009, we said these were the things we were going to do, and we indicated what we have done. That was the main purpose of the SONA on Thursday. We're not saying how we are going to go forward. Although,
in other words, it was a deliberate omission, is that what you're saying?
Not deliberate omission. We're giving a report. We're not omitting anything. We're giving a report of what we have done. Firstly, what the democratic government has done since 20 years, what we have done in the last 5 years as this fourth administration we came in. We had to give a report. And we see if we did not give a report, they would have been saying, but where is the report? What has he done? He made promises. Now, this was a very clear, deliberate, not omitting anything. Precisely for people who would have said, he didn't say much, I made it easier. I reminded people in the SONA that this, by the way, is a report. We are not presenting what we are going to do in the coming administration. That is still coming. I actually specifically helped people to understand because I did not want to leave any ambiguity. This was a report which was necessary to be given. We are finishing a term. We are finishing 20 years. Absolutely important to give a report. That presentation is coming. I think this is really putting the cart before the horse.
Okay, let's see. Now, Mr. President, I want then to ask you about specific things, starting with the immediate reaction of the opposition once you were done with your speech. They were saying you painted a rosy picture of the country, of the past 20 years. In other words, much as they agree with you that a lot has been done, but the picture that you specifically painted was actually much rosier than the situation is on the ground. And they point to the service delivery protest to say, if the picture was as rosy as you painted it, then we wouldn't be seeing the kind of protest that we're seeing throughout the country today.
Well, again, what do you expect from the opposition? I would be surprised if the opposition said, well, we agree with everything. Even if they would find a way to be an opposition. There's nothing surprising on that one. I don't think we painted a rosy picture. We stated the situation as it is. On the service delivery, for an example, we indicated what we have delivered, and we have. And I think when we talked about water, for an example, we said 95% we have delivered water in places that was never seen before. Some of the opposition people had never been to the rural areas. They don't even know. They just talk. We who know it all, we know exactly what we have done. That's not a rosy picture. It's the facts. That's why when it comes to service delivery, I made the point which I think is important to be made, that the protests are not necessarily, as it is claimed, is because of the failure of the government. Because if we delivered a number of things and we can specify, we can articulate, and somebody still says we have failed, it would be wasting time to argue with that person. The fact of the matter is, and this point I made, and I must also make the point, what sparks the protest is not one what you call a reason only. There are a variety of reasons. One of them, which has been recognized, even not just by us, by those who are keen to understand exactly, who do research, that in fact the rate of delivery has been so high that the 5% that has not received any, they become even more impatient. They want it now, not tomorrow. As a result of the delivery has raised expectations higher than they would have been. That's one factor, and we say it's a dominating factor. But there are other factors. Some of them are internal kind of political fightings. They are not the dominant factor, wherein some people want to remove others by creating an impression they are failing to do something. So I'm saying there are a number of issues. These are not the only two. There are many other reasons that have come. Some people, for an example, we now know, on the water, what you call a protest, for an example. Some people, on that one, two reasons that we have so far found. One is that some people have business of delivering water. If the water is delivered through the supply, then their business are undermined. So they sabotage the pumps so that people must protest, and therefore so that their business goes on. It's what we now know has happened. In some areas, some people have sabotaged pumps so that they undermine the municipality, so that there must be by-elections. They're hoping that they could be elected. So I'm saying there are a variety of these. It's not correct to stick to one reason and one reason only, that the government has failed, because we will argue that we have not failed. Because it would be wrong for anyone to think that this government could solve all problems 100% in 20 years on a damage that was done for centuries.
So, President, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts right there. And I want us to interrogate this issue further, because it is the one issue that's holding the country to ransom, and it does have serious implications for the election as well. So I want us to interrogate some of the points you've just made. That's when we come back after this short ad break.
sometimes a lot of people, in fact, do not have access, firstly, to palliative care. Secondly, even if they do,
So what? Do we just kill them if they don't have access to palliative care?
I think she's actually crucifying my question, with all due respect.
If you actually actively assist somebody to die, then you are convicted of murder.
Who should take the burden of terminating a life?
It's very problematic for doctors to play God.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back, and if you just joined us, you're watching a broadcast of a conversation between us and President Jacob Zuma following his State of the Nation address that he delivered on Thursday evening. Mr. President, I want to pick up on the point, the first argument you raised around the fact that you're saying that the reason people are taking to the streets is because they are seeing success elsewhere, and they can't wait to see what they are seeing elsewhere coming to them. If that was the case, then shouldn't, for example, municipalities be able to go out to communities and say, those of you, because they should have integrated development plans. They should be having timetables where they say, this is what's going to come in the next year, in the next 3, in the next 5 years, in the next 20 years. So your turn is coming. In other words, be able to take people along with them. They should also be able to demonstrate to the people that what you are seeing currently is all that our money can buy. In other words, the money that we have can buy. We have to wait a little bit longer. But because people are seeing in certain instances that actually municipalities or those who lead municipalities are not themselves tightening their belts, but are asking communities to do that. So they have a problem because they say, on the one hand, you're asking us to do one thing, but we're not seeing you. We're seeing you spending lavishly. We're seeing you engaged in all sorts of conspicuous consumption. So there's this juncture between what you are doing and what you are asking us to do, which is to be patient.
Well, that in itself is not an easy matter. One, because firstly, if you take communication, people do communicate. It may be the manner in which people communicate. I've heard many people saying, look, we are strained by the budget. We don't have a budget. Maybe the people may not understand what we're talking about the budget. It's a question of communicating, because all what it means, we don't have, exactly what you have said, we don't have enough now, it's coming. But it may be the manner in which people communicate. Two, it may be how often do they communicate, how clearly do they communicate that. That's one thing. But again, the issue of the fact that there is poverty and people who are working, who are earning, are able to look after themselves. Again, it's a question of how do we distinguish that? Because there may be a situation like, as people will say, that people are corrupt, are buying good cars whilst they're in poverty. But where do you draw the line? That people are using their salary to maintain themselves because they're employed. You are not employed. Of course, in addition to that, there is an accusation of corruption, which we are dealing with. So I'm just saying, though all of these issues need to be separated properly, and you can do so if you communicate clearly to the people. And I'm saying some might claim we are communicating, but the message might not be very clear, as it were, and therefore leave the doubt. And the doubt that therefore lead to people saying, let us take action. That's why I'm saying there's a variety of reasons why people will go for a protest on a country that is said to have done best of the countries in the continent in 20 years. In other places, you did not see protests. And in other places, in fact, they retrogressed instead of moving forward. But we didn't see protests. Of course, South Africa has a kind of an arrangement that is very unique. We have a very vibrant democracy, and people are very much aware of what they need to do if they are faced with a particular situation, like protests, like talking, like complaining, etc. In other places, they don't do. And that might make South Africa look different from other people. And that's why those who are in authority should, in fact, make it their business to communicate clearly where are the difficulties, including saying, when is it coming to you, given our plans? What are the priorities? I might feel my situation is very desperate, and yet those who are in government, in whatever level, they understand the situation globally. They know what is more priority than what you think is your priority. So all of those things need to be properly communicated.
What if then somebody else says, Mr. President, you may be right, but in certain instances, it really has nothing to do with communication. And cite as an example, I'm sure you would have seen this morning some of the criticisms of what happened over on Thursday especially, that if, for example, you are able, if the government is faced with the kind of protests we are seeing throughout the country, you would have sent a very strong signal or message to the country if Parliament had said, we're doing away with that dinner on Thursday evening. Mm-hmm. If Parliament had said, really sent very, very strong message that said says we're a government at work, we all these frills must be cut out completely, and not just reducing or capping the hotel rates or allowing people, fewer people to come instead of big numbers that used to come before. Very strong signal would have been sent there without having to explain or be judged about whether you've been successful at explaining or not. In other words, that action would have sent a more powerful signature than any other form of explaining could have done.
Well, again, it comes back to the point I made earlier, that it depends from where people are sitting, looking at the situation. You know very well that not long time ago, government has cut a lot of expenditure to actually ensure that we are saving so that we can deal with the issues. That we have done. Whoever is criticizing must have forgotten that this is what exactly we have done. You know, in a society where you have people that you invite to your place, to their own thing, because the State of the Nation address is their own. You want them to be here, you want them to experience it, but you starve them. I'm sure the first criticism would be saying, what type of a government is this one?
If there was ever a better criticism, isn't that a better criticism?
No, it's not. It is in our nature that if we've got visitors, you must look after them. If you don't, you are funny. All the more the reason must come. You can't say people should come from all over and you starve them. Some of them may not have the money to buy dinners and eat. You have invited them, they are here, you have got to look after them. I think it's a normal thing, really. Whoever was criticizing was just trying to find something to criticize because he had a problem to find anything to criticize.
Let's take another issue, Mr. President, the one you raised of people who have businesses who are then stoking fires in the hope that new administrations will come, will be instituted, so that in the hope that they can then influence those so that they can look after their businesses. What if then someone says part of the problem is the fact that the ANC has a lot of people who fund it or its activities in a lot of ways. And as a result, I mean, these are the people who are actually stoking the fires, knowing that they are to a degree, large degree it must be said, protected. Because at the end of the day, if they don't get those businesses, they will not be able to, for example, fund the ANC's activities.
Well, we don't have evidence of that, and I think the business that I'm talking about is like businesses, for example, of people who have trucks to deliver water. I mean, that's not a serious business to fund the ANC, really. Those are the kind of businesses and kind of people who would try to disrupt something in order to have the business going. I think we are not saying huge business people are party to this, and if I did not make it clear at the beginning, I'm very sorry. I was talking about this small little business that people do, not big business who can fund political parties.
But many of them do fund ANC activities at local government, at regional level, at the provincial level, because they are working in that space. That's where they make their money.
Well, I wouldn't know about that one. Unfortunately, I wouldn't know about that one. I think whoever support the ANC, businesses that we have talked to, are businesses who have got money. Because the ANC, you can't support the ANC with 20,000 rand. ANC needs sufficient support. It's a big organization.
20,000 rands make a million.
It needs very substantial kind of support. And it has nothing to do with them, the point you are making. No successful business will try to disrupt the workings of government. It will be the kind of people who are at a smaller level that they would be able to do that kind of thing. And it's not a usual thing, and I want to correct this because it's not unusual that political parties are funded. It's not just the ANC only. You know, oppositions are funded also by very serious monies. As you have seen recently what has happened, discussions taking place somewhere about some arrangement to take place in South Africa. These are serious business people. Those are the kind of people who support the world, and it is done throughout the world. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, we've been raising the issue. Couldn't we regularize the question of funding of political parties so that we remove these criticisms that some businesses are favored than others, etc., because it will always be there. Some other businesses have got particular beliefs. They will fund certain parties. Others, they will fund other parties. Others, for example, fund the opposition. They want the opposition to come in so that they are the ones who fund the ruling party. Vice versa. It's a normal thing that is happening. And in some places it is regulated, in some places it's not regulated. So I don't think we should mix that kind of normal thing that is done in democracies than the problems that we find in South Africa with regard to the protests of people who are doing business at that kind of level, at municipal level in particular.
One last point on this particular issue, Mr. President, and that is, to what extent, though, are you prepared to take, is government prepared to take responsibility for the protests? In other words, where really the finger is actually pointing at councillors, for example, or members of the provincial government, but also at national level, who are actually not doing their work. And for a minute here, I'm going to collapse party and state conveniently and say, to what extent does the ANC take responsibility for, one, your deployment policy, but also how you manage that deployment? In other words, whether you are in fact able to ensure that your councillors, for example, do in fact do their work. Because in certain instances, certainly at local government, you're not expecting a councillor of that particular ward or area not to know what is happening in their community and to even anticipate such things as as protests that have turned violent.
I think we have been taking action, and there are people who have dealt with. Wherever we come to know that our councillor or mayor or minister, whatever, we have taken action. I think whoever could say we are not taking action would be actually misreading the situation. We have been taking action where we have information. We have said to people who make the allegations, bring the information, we will act. What we cannot do, no government can do, is that if there is an allegation, untested, uninvestigated, you then take action. You need to provide information to allow government, therefore, to do the investigation, and where this has been done, we have acted. Is absolutely correct. I would also like to say that I don't think we should mix the deployment with those kind of people who do government work. Because deployment is done. It's just that in South Africa we call it deployment. Maybe we are more crisp about describing things. In other democracies, and all the democracies, once the party wins elections, it comes with its own people, removes others totally. It's actually known. Once the party that has been in government, you are in the United States or whatever, once it wins, those who were there because of the other party, they pack their bags and go. They don't call it deployment. And it is a mess. Here, you can't say if the party, the ANC, wins elections, it must then stop taking people that it knows work with it or its members and say, sorry, we look others because we want to be more innocent. It's never done in democracies. In democracies, parties bring people who understood the mandate, the manifesto, who would therefore implement it. I don't think this should be a cry, because it's a misunderstanding of democracy, of people who are saying it's because of the deployment. Deployments are done massively in other democracies, particularly older democracies.
Mr. President, once again, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts right there. We're going to take another quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about corruption.
It seems McDonald's is falling out of flavour. The world's biggest restaurant chain by revenue has missed the estimates of analysts with its latest results. The Department of Health is pushing ahead with changes in regulations on how tobacco products may be displayed in stores. It says the regulations are aimed at reducing exposure to such products and should help curb smoking, but people in the industry disagree.
That's business news, weekdays at 8 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back, and if you've just joined us, we're in conversation with President Jacob Zuma following his State of the Nation address on Thursday evening. Now, Mr. President, I want to talk about an issue. You did spend a considerable amount of time talking about corruption and what government is doing. And one of the solutions, say, insofar as the state is concerned, is that you're going to centralize the tender system. Now, there are people who argue that even, municipalities, provincial governments have tried to do the same thing, but that never stopped corruption.
Well, as I say again, people could look at it in different angles.
In fact, the argument that is being made is that people find ways of, shall we call it, infiltrating the whole system and eventually are able, in fact, there are people who are arguing that the centralization of the tender system is in fact going to achieve the opposite, because now you're going to have fewer people to deal with in the system, and once you've penetrated them and you have a hold on them, then the tenders are yours.
Well, as I say, people could look at it in different angles. The problem that we thought was very difficult to handle with, if you spread the tender systems throughout 3 levels of government and many things, we've got too many fingers everywhere. It's difficult to control that, to deal with that. If people, for an example, if we take the same argument, infiltrate sufficiently, if they infiltrate every other thing, you are in trouble. In other words, you give authority to many people. If that authority is corrupted, you have got corruption many other times. Centralizing it, at least you are in a better position to control it, to focus, and to know that you are dealing with one area that you can deal with effectively, create your own system to be able to prevent infiltration, to be able to detect what we call infiltration, to be able to limit the number. If you allow it all over, it means you will never even begin to be able to harness and then monitor. That is what came to us, that we have got to have the system which is going to be monitored very closely. It's better than trying to monitor everything everywhere. That's what we are trying to do. You know, the manner in which it has been done, it has created a situation that the thinking is everything in this country is corrupt, because it is everywhere. At least if you know there's one tender board, you know that the corruption is there, you can point your finger. And it is not going to taint many people. As we talk today, almost people believe something which is not true. They think every other councillor is corrupt. Every other government people is corrupt. Why? Because these tenders are everywhere. At least we'll save people who are not corrupt. If they will say there's corruption, they will say, people in the tender system are corrupt. You narrow it. You create a situation where the impression is not going to be left that this country is just full of corrupt people. You are going to say at least, people in that particular corner are corrupt, then deal with it. I think it is absolutely important. It's absolutely important for us to create and clean the impression that many of people who are not corrupt are understood to be corrupt because anyone who was in the government, corrupt. Because that's where decisions are taken. We limit that. You can say, the tender board is corrupt. At least it's not the country.
But speaking of impressions and corruption, Mr. President, then how much of the impression that you're saying is out there, that everyone is corrupt, is in fact due to the government not being able to dispel even the possibility of doubt that it is dealing with corruption? Let me tell you why I'm asking this. If there are people going around the country and saying, no, do this because, let's use that term, number one wants it. Let's give us this thing because we're doing something for number one. In other words, there are people who go around, invoke your name or do things in your name, but the person who suffers in the end is you. It is your credibility that is at stake because of people who go around saying you are asking them to do things.
Well, I don't know what to do with that kind of thing because you can't control people wherever they are. You know, some people who don't know your name use your name. I was saying to some people, fortunately, when I was in the province, an MEC in 1994, President Mandela was the president. You don't know how much his name was used by people. Diba says this, number one says this, or Mandela says this. Mandela left. Thabo Mbeki came in. You don't know how much his name was abused. When it came to me, fortunately, I was aware of it. Because we talked about it then, at Mandela's time, as well as Mbeki's time. People are not going to stop. Imagine if then the tenders are everywhere. People are taking decisions everywhere. So easy to mess up people's names who know nothing about it, as it has been happening. Once you restrict it, you centralize it, no one is going to be saying number one because those people don't take decisions. So you will even limit that kind of possibility of people abusing other people's names. They don't just abuse president names, by the way. Ministers' names, mayors' names, everybody else. It's just that at the president's level, that becomes almost a powerful one. If a person says, President so-and-so says this, somebody says, well, I must do it because it is said. I don't even know why they don't come and ask you to say this, so that you could clarify the issues.
Mr. President, let's take a practical example and something right now that goes to the core of the sort of nature of conversations everywhere in the country today. Something that's hanging like an albatross around your neck. There are people who say, who argued on Thursday evening and the next day, that, for example, as much as you gave us the statistics, what is being done around corruption, how many people have been expelled, suspended, how many are still facing all sorts of legal and other actions and so on, but saying this rings hollow because they believe you haven't come out clean on the renovations to your homestead, for example, right? Now, I'm saying, what if you had, the day you heard that there was something wrong with what is going on with regard to the renovations at your homestead in Nkandla. You then called everyone who was involved and say, none of you are going to invoke my name in vain. I want to know who did what. In other words, even before the sort of state security apparatus investigate and so on, I know who said what to me. I want to know who did what in my name among you. And if there were culprits that you could find on the spot there and then you dealt decisively with them on the spot so that no one even think ever again of invoking your name.
Well, you are asking a question that is very interesting, because you are saying the president must stop his work and start investigating. If there is a rumor, I must call everybody else. Yes, who said what? There are so many rumors that are being said in this country and allegations. There are structures that are meant to deal with those specific things. It's not the task of the president, once there is a rumor, whether against him or against anyone, to then stop everything he's doing and say, come. What is this? Because people are going to say, I don't know. And what do you do? That's why you have structures that deal with these matters. But it also goes to how the matters are raised. If somebody comes up with an allegation, this president is corrupt. He has eaten 250 million rands and is written by your colleagues, the newspapers. Should I call them? Because those are the people who must tell me where did they get this information. Will that be an exercise you can undertake? Because once that happens, you say, well, here is an allegation. What is this? That's the first thing you do. As a government, then government begins to investigate when the allegation is there. And this is what has been done. Insofar as the government is concerned, the relevant people who has the expertise to do so will actually do so. Not the political action that I can take, which will produce nothing. Because I could call everybody. They'll say, no, we just read the newspaper. We read the Mail and Guardian, the Sunday Times or City Press. And then where do you go? Because that's where the rumors come. Of people, if you ask them, they say, well, we protect our sources. And then where do you end? So you can't even start. And that's why the right people must say, okay, allegations have been made, let us investigate. Then the task team is set to investigate. It has investigated, it has made findings, it has made recommendations. And it says, President never did anything with any man. Government never built any kind of house. But of course, in this case that we are referring to, something unusual happens. Another institution investigates on top of the other, which is unusual. Which is absolutely unusual. Even if you wanted to conclude comments on the report that has come, you are actually not allowed to do so, because there's a report that must come up, which then will make you to make the conclusive kind of comments as to what actually happens. This has been complicated deliberately, because if there was an investigation, why to put another investigation? If you were a complainant, you knew that the investigation was going on, why not wait until the investigation is finished? You also complain on top, and you don't complain to the people who are investigating. This is complicating a matter for some reasons I don't know. But the point I'm making, you wouldn't, as a president, once there's allegations about government, then you do the investigation yourself, in whatever form. We have got to allow the institutions that are doing it independently. I can tell you, if I did so, they would say he's covering up. He's now putting fear to everybody. That's why you allow people to investigate.
Do you think it's a price to pay, though, given that, this is the one issue that people are now throwing at you?
No, we must be forgetting. It's not the first time. I built my homestead, and I was accused of having taken the money for the French to build it. It's not the first time. So, and again, one of the interesting things here, and I said this to other people relevant, there is so much unfairness in this Nkandla thing. Because the pictures which is shown there is 90% of the build of the structures are the structures that I'm still paying bond for. But it is given to the ordinary people. This is what Zuma has built with the 250 million. It's so unfair to me, But because I'm a president, I can't stand up there and box everybody. I must be fine, be patient, wait for the conclusions so that we could deal with the matters. Perhaps that's the price you pay as a president. You can't engage, you can't be a street fighter. We have got to wait that things are done properly, appropriately, by the appropriate structures, independent, so that they find the facts. But there is a lot of unfairness there. Some of the structures that are shown are not at all belonging to me, they belong to government. But the impression given to the people that all of that thing, this is what Zuma has done. The subject of discussions are very few items. I'm still paying a bond on my homestead, but I'm being told it's a wrong accusation. I used the 250 rand to build. I'm paying a bond. I've been paying a bond for years. Now, this is unfair. This is what happens when people take rumors, make allegations without investigating, without finding the truth.
Is there something on this matter that perhaps you still haven't said, that you would have said but can't because of the processes that are currently underway, including waiting for the report of the public protector?
Exactly. That's precisely the point. I wouldn't be speaking whilst investigations are going on, because that would be interfering with the investigation. But you guys have everything to say every day. That's a problem. That's a problem of democracy, which we must understand. Because everybody thinks I've got a scoop, I've got another scoop, whilst investigations are going on. We are restricted by the rules. You guys are not. You can speak anytime, any minute, say anything, exaggerate, do whatever, but we have got to, because we are in government, because we hold certain responsibilities, we have to keep within the discipline. Discipline that is very necessary for the society to be orderly. If we went your way, there will be no order, because we will be every day saying things.
Mr. President, we're going to take another quick commercial break. We'll be back right after this.
The news on SABC. We bring you news in your own language. News that affect you. Sports. We have
Catherine Drew, SABC News at the High Court in London.
Shervin Bryce's SABC News.
Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Nairobi.
We touch and change people's lives. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. You are watching a special broadcast brought to you by SABC News. A conversation with President Jacob Zuma following the State of the Nation address that he delivered on Thursday evening. Mr. President, I want to quickly put to you some of the questions that some of our viewers put out there. Beki Zwane from Olundi says, are you willing to take another 5 years serving as a president of the country and the ANC?
Well, Peggy, it is not necessarily my choice. I'm a member of the African National Congress that decides on its cadres to give task. If they say, we want you to be the president, we are saying here is a task. I am given a task. I can't say no. I've never said no when the ANC give me instructions. It's not a matter of me saying I want to be this or that one. It's a matter of the ANC taking a decision about me.
Well, Ndlelantle Pinyana says, can you expand more on your government's achievements on rural development since 2009?
Yes, I think we've done quite a lot. Firstly, you must know that when in 2009 I came in, I was clear that we've been paying lip service to this matter. I established a department so that it can focus on this matter. And I think since then, we have seen a lot of developments in the rural areas under this particular department. There is a lot that has been done, including changing the skills of the young people, being taken from rural areas, being trained, being sent back to their areas. We might not have reached every other part of the country, but that program continues. There are many projects throughout the country that have been established to deal with rural development. We have emerged with a program that begins to say, let us increase the number of roads in the rural areas, some main ones being tarred, or it's just that you don't have all the means to do it at one go. So there is a lot that we have done. We are trying to bring development into the rural areas through this department, including developing the agriculture, people who are coming into the farming, emerging farmers. We have developed many things. It has, in fact, generated a lot of activities, including people like the thing where we have some cooperatives, some non-governmental activities that have been, in a sense, being influenced by what is happening, being able to go to government to ask for support. And this department is ready to support. We have seen people being employed throughout who are clearing places, and I've gone to them, who are getting some allowance, who are therefore saying the life is changing. So there is something that is happening as a result of this development, combining with agriculture.
Sabelo Computer, doesn't sound like a real name, but says, the issue of labor brokers, are you really doing something about it?
That matter has been discussed a great deal, and I think for a few years now. You know that COSATU feel very strong about this matter. Initially, we were saying this matter needs to be regulated properly so that there's no exploitation. But the labor sector feels very strong. We are moving on this matter, trying to find a common ground so that we can deal with this matter once and for all. So the matter is receiving very active consideration by government.
So the working class should be holding their thumbs.
Absolutely.
That something better is going to come their way.
Something better is good. They've made a contribution. We know their views. We have discussed the matter. We have said, how far do we go? Do we phase it out? What is it that we do? So whatever will finally come as a product, it will be a product of a serious consideration, having taken into account the views coming from all direct, particularly from the workers who feel the impact of it more than anybody else.
Now, Khotso J, Mr. President, says, seems to be having problem with the Stats SA figures, which you also quoted. Says, how accurate are they and how did they come about?
Well, I don't know whether I could say how accurate are they. I mean, the Stats South Africa is what we do to get statistics. And we can't say they are not correct unless we have got an alternative kind of expertise to bring the more correct one. As long as Stats South Africa comes out with the stats and they've been able to defend it, we use those as standard statistics we could apply.
Mthunzi Mamgelo, Mr. President, says, for how long must we wait for the return of our land? People died for this land. 20 years of democracy is meaningless without land.
Well, there has been some land that has come back, and I think, again, in the State of the Nation address, we gave statistics of what has happened. Certainly, we have said as government, the kind of measures we have taken, they have not been sufficient to address this very critical issue. We are, therefore, working on what else do we do. We are looking at the legislation, even reopening of the claims of land. This is what we have done in this administration. And as to how long it will take is difficult to say. Bear in mind, it took centuries, the land being taken away, including legislation that was passed by parliament of the past to take the land. So we'll have to come also in a particular way. What we cannot do is to employ the methods that are outside of the framework of the Constitution and the law. We'll do everything within the law. But it is also important, by the way, in a democratic society, that people who are feeling the impact, they must keep on making the point so that they influence those who are public representatives to take decisions. So it's not a matter that we should keep quiet. Where we feel it, and I can tell you, I come from rural areas. I feel it. But I can't say because I feel it now, I must, following day, stand up and do something. I must find a way to say, within the system, how do we deal with this issue? If there is a law that we think we need to deal with this, let us come up with, so that we can say we are dealing with this issue once and for all.
Mr. President, lastly and very, very briefly, and I'm going to take you out of the state for a second. COSATU is in turmoil. The serious threats of a split doesn't look like that situation is going to change. How do you feel about that, particularly about some people's view is that part of the problem is in fact a divide and rule tactics, if you like, that are employed by the ANC in trying to get COSATU rally behind it at all cost?
Well, what is happening in COSATU, firstly, I think it should be clear, it's not the first time. Labor movements, historically, have always had difficulties from time to time as the development of society moved forward. It's not the first time. I don't think people should say what is happening in COSATU is for the first time is because the ANC is in government or the ANC wants to manipulate. Not at all, not at all. Labor movement, like even political parties, that at times the views differ and they split or whatever. This, even if you take COSATU, leading to the formation of COSATU, there were a lot of debates that are beginning to find their way, by the way, back. Because some people are still there who held those views. Some people, for an example, were thinking we needed to form a new party. They were even saying the South African Communist Party is not revolutionary enough. We need a workers' thing. Those things are coming, but it's not new.
Does it worry you?
No, it will always worry, but it is a natural development in any life of an organization. What is important is that COSATU leaders are dealing with the matter as they would have been dealt with historically. They will deal with it. They will come to a particular conclusion. It must worry us because the unity of the labor, not fighting among itself, is very important for the development of the country. Particularly if we take the alliance. We don't want problems in the alliance. We want the alliance that is united. So we are hoping that the interaction that is taking place will help all the labor to come to conclusions that would be making us to move forward.
Very briefly, yes or no, do you think that split is going to happen? It's inevitable, as many people seem to be thinking.
I don't think so. I don't think so. It may not be a split. It may be some people coming out. What has happened to the ANC?
But COSATU will remain.
COSATU will always remain.
Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Well, that's where we're going to end it, our conversation with President Jacob Zuma following his State of the Nation address on Thursday. From me, Vuyo Mvoko, and the rest of the crew, goodbye.
That's all we have time for. That was our contributing editor, Vuyo Mvoko, speaking to the State President Jacob Zuma. From me, Lulu Gabu, and the rest of the team, it's goodbye for now.